Welcome at Flick Favorites. I'm going to explain an American history, action, war, drama film called We Were Soldiers. In my opinion, it's a great movie. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy the content. Like and subscribe. Your support would be appreciated. The beginning of the film is a flashback to June 1954, when French soldiers died to a trap in Vietnam's Central Highlands Ia Drang Valley. The survivors were put to death by Nguyen Huyen, the Viet Minh commander. As South Vietnam's ally, the United States is currently engaged in combat in the Vietnam War. The combat leader is chosen to be Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, who oversaw a fighting company in Korea. He has no idea that this will be the most difficult task he has ever undertaken. Moore and his family had just recently relocated to the base. Moore researches the features of the helicopters that would be required once the expedition starts. He merely needs to put together a group of individuals with the necessary abilities. While Major Bruce Crandall and his men are enjoying a game of baseball, Moore approaches them. Moore explains to him his idea for a brand new air cavalry force. Moore is pleased by Bruce's team's tools and personnel. Crandall's team practices even on Sundays. Moore is certain that Crandall and his group won't back down if the going gets tough. According to Moore, the unit will fly into hostile area and be outnumbered. The newly organized Air Cavalry Battalion is met by Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore and Sergeant Major Basil Plumley. Then their helicopters are presented to them. Moore emphasizes his and Plumley's accomplishments to reassure the crew that they are in capable hands. After that, the unit begins its training for the Vietnam War. Moore forewarns them that as soon as their helicopters touch down on the battlefield, they would come under fire. They are also warned to look out for one another because they will only have each other left after the battle starts. The 7th U.S. Cavalry Regiment's First Battalion is under Moore's command. Currently, they are at their camp in Vietnam. Moore is informed that although their base was attacked last night, no one was hurt. The opposing soldiers withdrew for unclear reasons and are now hiding in the mountains. The command is given to Moore and 395 of his men to follow the enemies through the highlands. The issue is that after the enemy's location is discovered, they have no idea how many Vietnamese they will be up against. The mission goes ahead despite the danger. Following that, helicopters are used to deploy the first group of soldiers. These men will have been on their own for 30 minutes by the time the next set shows up, since it takes the helicopters that long to get back. The soldiers are instructed to continue perimeter contact after landing. A soldier from North Vietnam is then observed shortly after. Second Lieutenant Henry Herrick follows him. He commands his soldiers to follow, but they are unsure if this is the best course of action. They are led into a trap by the Vietnamese scout. Herrick and a number of his men are killed in the process. Once the soldier is in arrest, he reveals that the base camp for the entire Vietnamese Army Division, which has 4,000 soldiers, is where they are at night. The scout also discloses how motivated the Vietnamese army was to murder Americans. They were the ones who, 11 years ago, ambushed and wiped out the French army. The survivors are then completely isolated from the rest of the unit and are heavily surrounded. Sergeant Savage assumes command of the group and reports the outcome to the artillery. Savage gives his soldiers instructions on how to handle their guns. If at all possible, one shot, one kill. They have no idea when assistance will arrive. It is obvious that they should keep what they have. Major Crandall is to be alerted over the radio by radio operator Moore that enemy forces are in their landing zone. Soldiers are asked to jump because the helicopters won't be touching down, making them an easy target. Moore commands the sergeant major to make room for a new landing zone. They must have a safe landing area because they immediately need reinforcing. They are able to unload the ammunition and load the wounded men thanks to this move. Moore issues an aerial attack order to destroy the approaching foes. Savage and his men take advantage of the cover of night to hold their ground and wait for the ideal moment to assault. They are eliminated by his troops, but they are still in great danger. Savage is informed by the expected reinforcement that they won't be able to reach their destination tonight since the enemies are blocking their path. Prior attempts to cross the line resulted in immediate fatalities for several. One of the wives of the combat dead soldiers is consoled by Julia Moore, Hal Moore's wife. Julia Moore can notice whether a yellow cab comes at the base because the women of the troops live close to one another. This frequently denotes the death of a soldier. Some women don't think this is at all respectful because there isn't even a government official present, let alone a chaplain who can console family members. The taxi admits that sending telegrams to the wives is not something he enjoys doing. Soon after, the cab began delivering Julia Moore's mail. After that, Julia makes it a point to deliver the telegraph to the wives, despite how dire it may seem. She wants to be sure that she is there to help. She is a soldier's wife after all, so there is no guarantee that she won't suffer the same fate as others. Nguyen Huyen, the Viet Minh commander, meets his men and informs them that their strategy will change. Because they can control the distance, the Americans are able to employ their artillery effectively. Nguyen Huyen desires a close contest during the assault. Then he gives the order to launch a massive assault against the American troops. A bayonet is fixed to a Vietnamese soldier's rifle's muzzle. He has made up his mind to find the American officer. He then rushes towards Moore, who is absorbed in the radio call for assistance. He is shot in the head by Moore, fortunately, before it is too late. The Americans are being overrun by the enemy. The Americans don't back down as they come at them from all sides. The indistinguishability of the perimeters is the sole issue at the moment. The pilots will struggle to distinguish between enemies and allies in the event of air attacks. In a final effort, Moore instructs First Lieutenant Charlie Hastings, his air commander, to contact Broken Arrow. If the U.S. troops' position becomes untenable to defend, this command directs all available aircraft to assist in and attack the opponents, particularly those close by. This implies that there is a chance of friendly fire. The Americans received crucial assistance from the airborne attack, which began by killing numerous Vietnamese military forces and Viet Cong soldiers. However, the action also brought about a friendly fire incident that resulted in the deaths of some American soldiers. The North Vietnamese invasion is repelled by the cry for Broken Arrow. Moore can now deploy a team to rescue the stranded platoon that is being led by Evil. He then makes a call to Captain Nadal to complete the task. The crew led by Nada successfully locates Sergeant Savage and his soldiers. 2 of them are missing in action, and 40 of them have been killed. The radio operator tells Moore that the brigade headquarters wants him taken from the battlefield at dawn. When Moore learns of this order, he becomes enraged because it would mean leaving his troops in the middle of a conflict. Even if the order came from General Westmoreland, he picks up the phone to tell the headquarters that he would not follow it. No matter what happens, fighting with his soldiers is currently his first priority. Moore is currently concentrating his efforts on finding the 2 missing soldiers. He still has faith that they made it. The 2 troops have also been killed, they learn after scanning the area. One of them was a married couple with a young child. The same soldier who spoke to Moore on a personal level before their deployment. Moore is heartbroken, but he must persist for the sake of his team. Moore gives Sergeant Major Plumley the assignment of giving the last of the ammo to each troop. He is aware that Nguyen Huyen is preparing his next assault. They must maintain their attention at all times. Nguyen Huyen is preparing a decisive attack on the American soldiers in the meantime. To ensure that the Americans are routed, he gives commands to his forces regarding when to launch a full-scale assault. Without his knowledge, the Americans are approaching them and are going to cause mayhem. Moore tells his soldiers to connect their bayonets. No turning back at this point. Close fighting is anticipated when they draw near the enemy's command post. The officer is correct since the combat starts shortly after. The Vietnamese soldiers are overrun by Moore and his crew. Gun base camp guards are poised to begin fire, but Major Crandall and other helicopter gunships stop them in their tracks. The guard is instantly killed by the helicopter's powerful guns. The Americans have crossed the barriers, Nguyen Huyen is told. Vietnamese soldiers are no longer able to stop the Americans from reaching the command center as they close in on them. Before it's too late, he needs to determine what to do next. Then, as he escapes via a tunnel, Huon issues the order to evacuate the headquarters. To cover the recently finished combat, media representatives arrive at the scene of the conflict. Moore approaches Savage to express his joy at seeing Savage still alive. Knowing that his men died while he lived, he also shows sadness. Savage requests advice on how to relate the story of the dead guys. He is unprepared for this situation. He had no concept that he would wind himself in charge of a group. Moore instructs him to alert others about the soldiers' suffering. Once Moore's job is finished and every soldier has been located, he goes back to the helicopter's landing area to be picked up. He made sure he was the last person to go. To gather their losses, Nguyen Huyen and his soldiers arrive on the battlefield. He says that the Americans will believe that they have won. Thus, this will turn into a fight for America. Julia Moore realizes that a yellow taxi has just pulled up outside her house. She fears that Hal Moore might have been murdered. She tells the kids to go to bed because she doesn't want them to see her break down. She is shocked to see Hal Moore, who has just returned from combat. That is how the movie comes to an end. In my opinion, this is a powerful movie you won't forget. The perspective is appropriate and refreshing. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.